In this video tutorial you will learn how to adjust polling of devices by IED of ED2 series via IEC 60870-5-103 standard protocol. Before starting to work with the configuration, it is recommended that you watch the video tutorial on configuring of ED2 opening and saving of configuration file. After successfully opening the configuration file, go to System Parameters section, Serial Protocols tab. To poll external devices by the IED according to IEC 60870-5-103 standard, the protocol list must contain IEC 103 master. Next, in order to connect devices to the IED via RS-485 interface, let's adjust its port. In Communication Parameters tab, we shall assign the IEC 103 master protocol for the required RS-485 port and adjust the rest of the port parameters. To learn how to do this, see the video tutorial on configuring ED2 IED network parameters. Let's go to IEC 103 Protocol Master. To add and remove slave devices in 103 Protocol Master section, use the respective buttons on the toolbar. The maximum possible number of devices polled by IED is 32. Let's add a slave device and set its parameters according to the project requirements. For convenience, we will set the name of the slave device in Russian and in English. The name in Russian can be left by default, or the name in English can be duplicated. Network address of a slave device. Next, let's set the time interval in seconds between sending of commands for establishing of communication with the slave devices. In GI interval, the time of periodic polling of devices is set in seconds. The general poll is used to read the state of all variables defined in the variables area. Setting of the variables will be shown later. The polling interval sets the time in milliseconds between polling of each of the variables. The confirmation timeout sets the maximum time in milliseconds during which the slave device must confirm the master's request. The response timeout sets the maximum time in seconds, which is counted down after receiving confirmation of the request. During this time, the slave device must transmit the data to the master device. The retries count sets the maximum number of attempts to request data by the master device in the absence of a response from the slave device. The parameters request confirmation timeout, response timeout, and number of request retries are used to diagnose the state of communication between the master device and the slave device. For more details on communication diagnostics, see the video tutorial on using ED2 diagnostics of communication protocols and time synchronization. Further, two types of variables can be added for the slave device: bool, receiving the value of logical signals, and float, having the values in floating point format. Let's add and configure a variable of the bool type. Let's set the name in Russian and in English. The name in Russian can be left by default, or the name in English can be duplicated. The slave device address type is set automatically. Adjustment of the fields of the variable parameters window is carried out in accordance with the project and IEC 60870-5-103 standard. The function number and information number, set according to the configuration of the slave device, are used to generate the data read address. For the bool variable type, one of the destination is selected, an analog buffer or a binary buffer. To use the destination block, there must be at least one virtual block v input _ IEC 103 in the blocks section. If necessary, the names of the received signals can be changed in the existing blocks. And also set the pulse mode for all block signals, in which the received signal will be reset to logical 0.5 milliseconds after its receipt. The received signals of this virtual block can be used in the IED logic. Also, in the blocks section, removing and adding of blocks of virtual inputs is available. Let's choose the destination block. Select the required virtual block and destination offset parameter from the drop-down list. Further, in destination index parameter from the drop-down list, select the required input of the virtual block. Quantity of values parameter is not used. Let's add a second variable of bool type. Let's perform a similar setting by selecting the receiver binary buffer. Destination offset parameter for each binary value is set automatically, reserving 3 values for its recording in the binary buffer. Destination index parameter as well as quantity of values are not used. Let's add a variable of float type and configure it. For float variable type, the receiver is selected as analog buffer. For the first added variable of float type, destination offset parameter is set automatically, without the possibility of editing it. Destination index parameters as well as quantity of values are not used. For the second and subsequent variables of float type, destination offset parameter for each analog value is set automatically with the possibility of editing, reserving 4 values for its recording into the analog buffer. However, it is not recommended to edit destination offset parameter, but if it is changed for the protocol to work correctly, it is necessary to observe the rule that these parameters must differ by 4 or more values for all variables. After setting the parameters of the slave devices, go to Calculated Values section. The values received by analog, as well as binary IED buffers, can be used in the calculated values using get IEC 103 var function. Let's add it and set the parameters. The first parameter specifies the name of the slave device in the IEC 103 master protocol and the name of the variable in the slave device. The second parameter is not used and does not need to be changed. For more information on how to work with calculated values, see the video tutorial on configuring ED2 analog inputs and measured values. We return to the Serial Protocols tab of the System Parameters section. Choose IEC 103 Master Protocol. Instead of slave devices parameter in the drop-down list, mark the enabled slave devices with a check mark. Slave 1 name corresponds to the first slave device in the order number of the 103rd protocol master. Slave 2, second one, etc. After completion of editing the configuration, you need to save it via File menu or by clicking on Save button on the toolbar. This ends up the video tutorial. We hope it proved itself useful to you. Thank you for attention.